Scripture lesson today is taken from Romans chapter 12, verses 9 to 13. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality.
Well, good morning. It's great to see everyone here this morning. And again, my name is Bruce Boland, and I am here with my lovely wife, Marnie. This time she gets to be with me here. I was here 2 years ago to do a youth rally. We had a great time. It was great to meet a lot of you, and I am so thankful for the relationships that have been established throughout that time. Thank you for taking such good care of my son when he was here for 2 summers ago. He had a blast, and I know he had a lot of growth at that time. So I know a lot of that had to do with you. And I am just amazed at how the church goes so much bigger than your home congregation. You are all part of a kingdom, and this kingdom is all around the world. And it's just neat to have the connection with you people. This morning, you might be wondering, what are we going to talk about this morning? Weapons. I do want to talk to you about weapons. We all have weapons at our disposal. And unfortunately, in the news right now, there are many types of weapons that we hear that we kind of get afraid of. You know, there's weapons that we have that are, first of all, I know that there's this hydrogen bomb that's out that I don't know much about, but I guess that's even more dangerous than some of the other weapons that we've seen in the past. But I want to show you some pictures of some weapons that we have. We have some nuclear weapons, all right? There's also some biological weapons. We also have chemical weapons. And you're probably all familiar with those weapons, and you're wondering, what on earth and where is he going with this? But I want to, first of all, take an opportunity to thank Scott at the back. Scott, thanks for being our guy at the back. You know what? The sound guy gets the littlest credit ever. And you know what? The only time you notice he's back there is when he's missed a slide. But thank you very much. I used to do that at the church in Niagara Falls, and I still do, and I know what it's like. And thank you very much for serving in that way. But these are weapons that we face. But I want to read a scripture to you from 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 4, which is the next slide. For though we live in this world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons that we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. So what is he talking about? What are these weapons that we have at our disposal? Well, it's interesting because when you look in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 4, that's what we've just read. But the next verse, it's not up on the screen, but the next verse says that we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. Now I'm asking you, what is the best way to do that? On Facebook? I'm telling you, Facebook has to be the worst place that you can try to state your case and demolish an argument. Would you agree? And if you're one that likes to throw out stuff on Facebook to see what kind of reaction you get, it doesn't work that way. But I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge your thinking. I want to challenge you into doing this. And the great thing that I see here amongst all you people and what I've witnessed this weekend is how much you love to serve. I tell you, it is exciting to see how everyone has worked together this weekend. And Marnie and I have been able to spend some time with your children. You know what a highlight for me was yesterday? And Kim can attest to this. She was in our class helping us with the little kids. But at the end of our puppet show, and we did a craft, and we got to sing with some of these kids. But I asked if anyone would, those young kids would lead us in prayer. And a young Josiah put up his hand. And he prayed in the quietest voice, but you could hear he was praying to his God. And I thought, wow, these children are moldable at this time. And they have a passion and a love for God at this time. And I just thought, thank you so much for allowing us to be here to minister to your children and also to you. But you have a congregation that just loves to serve. So this may not be new to any of you, but I want to challenge you with thinking about why it's important. You see, the weapon that I'm going to talk about is a weapon not of mass destruction. It's a weapon of mass instruction. And you all have access to it. You may not know what it is, but you probably have two of these in your home if you have a kitchen and a dining room. Because what it is, it's a dining room table. You have a weapon at your disposal, each and every one of you. And if you don't have a home where you can use the table, you have a Tim Hortons coffee shop somewhere where you have a table. You have access to a table. Because I tell you, it's so important. Think about how many times in the Bible that Jesus was sitting around reclining at a table. When he was with his disciples sitting around reclining at a table. When he instituted the Lord's Supper, he was with his disciples reclining at a table. He ate with tax collectors. And it drove the Pharisees nuts, didn't it? He ate with Pharisees. He ate with prostitutes. Because Jesus completely reveals his kingdom around a table. You know, here's some examples. For starters, and pardon the pun, but the Last Supper, when he was sitting around the table with his disciples, we know that. What about the feeding of the 5,000? That was probably one of the best picnics you could ever have been at. Where he says to his disciples, you feed them. You feed them. And they said, how on earth are we ever going to be able to feed all these people? Do you know how many years of wages it's going to take to feed all these people? But I believe Jesus is saying that to us. You feed them. With as little as you have, you feed them. Because Jesus makes the plenty, right? I mean, there was leftovers. Out of 5 small loaves and 2 fish, there was leftovers. It's exciting what Jesus can do centered around a meal. What about Matthew, the tax collector? In Matthew 9, Matthew, the tax collector, and his crazy friends, all his tax collector friends, and Jesus goes there and he shares with him about his kingdom. The feeding of the 4,000. What about when the 2 men are kind of like, are you kidding? He's died? And they're back walking on the road to Emmaus, back to their hometown, not sure what is going on. And they walk along the road with Jesus unknowingly. And they invite him into their home. And guess what happens? When he breaks bread with them, all of a sudden their eyes are wide open because Jesus has risen from the dead. Interesting, it was around a table. What about the meal with Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus, up in the tree, you come down. Come down from that tree. I'm going to your house today. The meal that we all have meals, and we all love to eat, don't we? Do you know that most of us eat 21 times a week? Plus snacks. That's a lot of times to eat with someone else. But why is it that there's so many accounts of Jesus centered around a table? Why is it? I used to sell cars for 13 years for Toyota. I saw the apprehension of everyone that was coming into the sales floor, onto the sales floor, looking at cars. They're trying to avoid the salespeople. Why? Because they have a wall built up. They don't want to be sold. They have questions, but they're not sure how to ask without maybe getting manipulated into buying something. Our number one goal was to get people into the car so that they could experience the test drive and feel what it would be like to own it. So everyone was like, no, I don't want to do that yet. How much is it going to cost me? But I'll tell you something. Making a relationship with those people and saying, you know what, I wouldn't mind even bringing the car to your home if you wish. And I would drive the car to their home, take their family out in the car. We'd come back in and we'd sit at their kitchen table and we'd discuss numbers. It was interesting. All the walls completely torn down. The relationship. We'd talk about their kids. We'd talk about my kids. We'd share family stories together. All the while selling a car. Do you know that every time I met around someone's table, I sold that car? Why? Because it's about relationships. And around a table is when walls are destroyed, when walls come down. We can resolve a lot of conflict in the church today by having people into our homes. It's so important. I believe that for us to have the biggest impact in our community, we must learn the art of hospitality. It's interesting, at the end of the verse that was read this morning, it says to practice hospitality. Why do we need to practice it? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I'm not very good at it. I'll be honest with you. I am not good at hospitality. But I tell you, I love when we finally have people over, and when they're leaving, I just think, that was nice. That was great. Got to get to know them a little bit better. But you know what? It's not just to eat together. It's to share our lives with them. It's to share Jesus with them and what difference he makes in your life. But that's the place that people are going to be a little more attentive and open to understand of what Jesus means to you and how he's changed your life. You see, this is why I'm not very good at hospitality. We had a family that was meeting with the church, and Marnie and Carrie Somerville, she's been here. And Carrie is our worker bee. She's just a girl that just loves to serve. And Marnie and her were going on a Bible study with the woman that had come over to our house, or was going to come over, but they had been at their house. And they live in this $1 million home. The husband is a owner of a chemical company. And so they've been there in their backyard, and they have a pool, and it's in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and it's overlooking a beautiful meadow. It's just beautiful. Well, they've been visiting our church for a while, and we wanted to have them over for dinner. I don't know what it is, but I get nervous when people are going to come over for dinner. I was on chicken duty, so I'm in the barbecue, and I'm cooking chicken, and it was perfect. I had to make sure I didn't burn it. It was perfect. And I bring the chicken into the house, and Marnie says they're going to be about 10 minutes late. I said, okay. But I can remember us standing in our kitchen, and my nerves are just, okay, they're coming. I'm getting ready for them. What are we going to talk about? What are we going to share? I hope this conversation goes well. Well, they come in. First of all, they drive up, and we live in a semi. So our driveway on our left side is attached to the driveway of our neighbor's house on the other side. But then we're also attached to a neighbor on this side, which have their own driveway. Well, they drove up into our neighbor's driveway. And I had to go outside and say, I'm so sorry. I said, you've parked on the wrong side. That's our neighbor's. You're going to have to park on the street in front. So for some reason, they didn't park on the street in front. They went up my other side of my neighbor's driveway on the other side. And I had to go outside and tell them, I'm sorry, that's that's the neighbor's house. You're going to have to park on the street. They finally parked on the street. But then they started to walk up to my neighbor's door. And so I said, no, we're over here. And then I realized just how small of a house we had compared to theirs. We invited them in, and they started to have this conversation. They did not speak very good English. He was Italian, and he had an accent. And so it was very, very hard to listen to what he's saying in English. I had to really focus. But they started an argument, him and his wife, about where the keys were as they're coming into our foyer with their kids. And I thought, okay, this is going to go good. And as they finally figured out that the keys were where the keys were, they come into the home. And we had them sit down around our dining room table that had all mixed-mashed chairs that we could find from the house. And we had them sit down, and we have all different types of cups and stuff to make it work for all these many people. And we just started to listen. We started to listen to his story and of his travels, of his business. And we were laughing with the kids. But it was really hot this day. It was really hot this day, and he had 2 shirts on for some reason. And all of a sudden, as he's telling us his stories and I'm listening with everything I've got to try to keep up, he starts sweating profusely. And he realizes how hot he is, and he says, I need to go to the washroom to change my shirt. So he goes upstairs, and he takes his shirt off. But he puts his other shirt that he had underneath on. But when someone has missed the washroom and gone to a different room? So he's in my bedroom, and I had to go upstairs and say, oh, Tony, the bathroom's this door here. Oh, okay, so he goes to the bathroom. We're having fun by now. We're laughing our heads off. And of course, now he comes downstairs and completes his story, and we're listening, but I'm thinking, this is really, really hot. So I went to the ceiling fan, and I turned our ceiling fan on. And mothers, wives, this ceiling fan hadn't been on for a while. So all of a sudden, it is snowing on our dining room table, dust. And as we're talking, we're laughing, and dust is landing on his shirt, and I'm reaching over. The kids are looking. It's in their dessert, and I tell Marnie, she's in the kitchen. I said, Marnie, what is going on the fan? Oh, you didn't turn on the fan. I said, I did. Well, after we picked our dessert out of our dust bunnies out of our dessert, we had a little bit more conversation. And needless to say, they haven't been back to church. Now, if I didn't know otherwise, I would have thought it was because of the way we practiced hospitality that night. But it had more to do with some doctrinal issues and things like that, which I'm grateful. But I tell you, something happened that night. It's a night I will never forget. It was an experience. I got to practice hospitality. Our kids still talk about it to this day. It's exciting. But I know it's difficult. Hospitality is difficult. So what's the purpose of it? I believe that the purpose of hospitality is to experience life together. It's get to know each other's stories. It's get to share the story of Jesus to the person you're having over. But you know what I think the most important thing of it all is? It's to kill our selfishness. Because I realized something that night, that I'm a pretty selfish person. You know, how is it and how do you feel when someone knocks at your door and it's 7 o'clock? First thing you think is, who on earth is knocking on my door? And so you answer it, and it may be a salesperson. How do you treat them? What if the phone rings and it's evening time and you've just sat down and having some time with your kids and the phone rings? How do you treat them? I often wonder what Jesus would do if someone knocked on his door, if he did have a home. What would he do? And that's when I'm humbled, because you know what? He probably would have invited them in. Because having a guest changes everything. It takes you away from yourself and your selfishness. Just think about it. See, when we practice hospitality, what we do is we experience God's power, where He conquers our fears and our stinginess that is so wrapped up in the gravity of our self-centeredness, doesn't He? Our culture today has taught us that we need to build fences. We need to build fences to protect our privacy. We get annoyed when there's a knock at the door, right? We get annoyed when the phone rings. But can you imagine Jesus living this way? See, the ultimate act of hospitality is when He decided to give up His life for ours. When He put us above Himself. You see, and because Christ died on that cross, we all have an opportunity to experience the hospitality of God one day, centered around a banquet table. See, we become part of His family. We're all welcome around His table. So why did He send Jesus to die? So that we together can experience hospitality with Him in heaven. Do you remember Apollos? And he was preaching. He probably had a great message. And he probably had a lot of zeal for Christ. But it was Priscilla and Aquila that listened to his message. And you know what they did? Right after he was finished speaking, they went right up to him and says, "You're wrong. That's not right what you are teaching. You need to change what you're thinking here. Let me show you." No, that's not what they did. What they did was they invited him into their home. And in their home, they taught him the way more adequately. I've witnessed this. Recent Christian, Daniel Okita, Kerry Somerville, met him at the gym and said, "Hey, why don't you come out to church?" So he did. Maybe he had ulterior motives, I don't know. But he started coming out to church and we met him. And I remember studying the Bible with him with Darren Douglas. And Darren would say, "Okay, we're meeting with Daniel tonight at 7 o'clock. So we'd go over there. The first thing he'd ask Daniel, "Daniel, did you get something to eat?" "No, just finished work, just got here." "Oh, hold on a second." Goes upstairs. Benita cooks him a nice dinner of leftovers, brings it down before we even start the Bible study. And he has a meal. There is something about the table, about your home, about food that breaks down walls. Many Bible studies after that, and now Daniel's a Christian today. Daniel's been invited to Thanksgiving dinner through the church. Daniel's mom and dad don't live here. They live in the Congo. He's here by himself. But now he's part of a family. He's part of a family. And people throughout the church are having Daniel over for dinner as often as they can. But I often wonder what had more of an impact on Daniel. Was it studying the Bible with him? Or did more of the impact come from he felt part of the family? I witnessed many years of Sunday afternoon meals that my mom and dad prepared. I remember walking up to the green door after church. We walked in and it smelled like roast beef. Every Sunday afternoon, I knew someone was coming over for dinner when I was a kid. I just hoped they had kids so I had someone to play with. But she used the home as a place for hospitality, that we can invite someone that was over for dinner that was at church that day. But I know we all have excuses, right? I have many. I can't cook well enough. I can't boil water. Our house is too small. We can't afford to have people over. The situation in my house is way too difficult. I'm not a people person. It's just too stressful. We don't have enough chairs. My house is a mess. Oh yeah, the things in my home might get broken. And you know what? Nobody asks us back anyway. Have you used that one? Choose to make your home the most hospitable place in your community. Parents, don't love your physical possessions more than you love your children and their friends in the neighborhood. You know, your carpet, it might get worn, and your couch, it might get stained, but it's been stained with hospitality. Teach your kids our house doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. Our possessions don't belong to us. They're for our use, and they belong to God. Marnie and I made a commitment. Every other Sunday, we have 15 to 20 of our youth over for Chilean soup. They come over after worship service. They invite their friends. And it's been a great opportunity to get to know each other's stories. But it's been a great opportunity to be able to invite people we're trying to reach out to. Because we do life together. And we build relationships together. Like I said, to close this, we all have times that we eat. Most of us eat 21 times. My challenge for you, I'm going to make it easy. Choose one of those times to have a meal with somebody else, centered around a table, and just get to know their stories. Listen with gospel ears. And when you get the chance, you share your story and how Jesus completely changed your life. Because we're all fighting. We're all fighting. And we're all demolishing strongholds. But the best way we can do it is through relationships and fighting with weapons of mass instruction. I really appreciate my time here. I encourage you to stick around for what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about looking up and reaching back. Looking up and reaching back. I'm going to leave it at that, so maybe it'll whet your appetite to stick around. But thank you very much for allowing us to be here, and we really appreciate it. I'm Colin Wayne.